Hi, everyone. I'm Jeannie Walters, CEO and founder of Experience Investigators. And today I'm going to walk you through another resource from our Year of CX. You can find the entire library of resources at yearofcx.com. Today, we'll be reviewing our CX Meeting Agenda and Guidebook resource. Now, the reason we put this into place is because many of you reached out and said, yes, we want a cross functional team of leaders to help us with our prioritization and resourcing of our customer experience efforts. What do we do once we have that team? So let's go ahead and get started. So, within this guidebook, we wanted to, first of all, give you a few reminders. Now, as you work through creating a cross functional team of leaders and getting together on a regular basis to move your customer experience programs forward, you want to keep in mind a few things. Number one, you can't do this alone. We need cross functional coalitions. That means this guidebook might be a great way to get people engaged early so that you earn that buy in. Don't be shy about doing this as a team to create the right agenda for your organization. And essentially, that's another reminder. Every organization is different, every industry is different, every customer experience program is different. So modify this to make it meet your needs for your leadership and your goals. If you haven't already, we also recommend having some foundational pieces in place. Things like your customer experience mission statement, your customer experience success statement, and a CX charter to help guide this team into the future. Now, lucky for you, we have some resources available for you. You can find the links here. And if you're using the PDF, you can click right there to get those links and find those resources to help you really get set up for success. And if you are doing this on your own, we encourage you to ask questions, reach out, let us know what works for you. And of course, me and my team, we are available for you as well. So let's talk about how to build an agenda, how to set yourself up to make sure that as you go into your meetings, they're already set up for success. Now, the first thing we need to think about are the logistics. How often will we be meeting? What does this meeting actually look like? So think about what is realistic in your situation. Now, we recommend, and the way that this guidebook is created is around the idea of a 90-minute meeting. Now, in some cases, you might want to shorten that or lengthen it. We also recommend that you really think about how much time each item on this agenda will realistically take you. We have some guidelines for that within this guidebook, but feel free to adjust those to make that work for you and your team. The other question to ask, how often should we have this meetings? I get this question a lot. And in some cases, it depends, right? We need to respect the schedules that we have. And if we're asking cross-functional leaders to partake in this kind of outside of their regular roles, we need to make sure that the schedule is respected. Now, when we are starting this with our clients, what we always recommend is start with more frequency if you can, because you'll be building something. You'll be creating what this looks like and what are those next action items and everything else. And in order to build that momentum and that accountability, you probably want to meet more often. So in the beginning, you might challenge yourself and your team to meet as frequently as every 2 weeks. The key is to make sure that there is progress happening in between these meetings. These meetings are really about action. So if you don't have enough time to make progress, or if you find that people aren't being held accountable, you want to look at your frequency and either increase that frequency and maybe lower the meeting time. Or in some cases, if you've got a good rhythm and you know things are happening, you may want to extend that to monthly. Monthly meetings can be very efficient once you get rolling, and they can usually adhere to this 90-minute timeline. Some organizations do push this out to quarterly, which in some cases can work, but I always recommend thinking about this as progress. If those quarterly meetings are because you're not truly committed to your customer experience programs and success, then I would rethink why you're having these meetings to begin with. These meetings are not about reporting out what you're doing. They're about progress, checking in, making sure everybody feels accountable, making sure that you're aligned on the goals and the mission, and that you're never losing sight of why we're all doing this. Customer experience leaders do so much. We have to make sure that the efforts we're putting in are earning that return that we know they can deliver for our business results. That's what these meetings are all about. So, as I go through this guide and as you work through this on your own, feel free to adjust to make sure it's customized for you, your team, and your organization and industry. So let's talk about how you do this. Well, what should happen in these meetings? We have 5 different things here that we want you to consider. The first is reviewing your CX mission and goals. Now, this is something that you've heard me talk about a lot. If you don't have a CX mission statement, this is where you really need one. It's something that is your North Star, something that everybody can align behind and think, this is why we do what we do. You also want to have very clearly defined goals for your customer experience. When we talk about customer experience, sometimes we forget that customer experience is happening whether we're doing these things or not. What we're doing here is customer experience management. All of this work is to provide that intentional customer experience that delivers on business results. And the only way we can hold true to that is to track our progress, is to make sure we're putting in the right efforts, is to adjust our goals as needed or react to different market shifts and things like that. That's why when you think about frequency, that's the type of thing I want you to think about, as well as what are our actual goals and how can we get there in the best possible way, in the most efficient way possible as well. So the next thing on the agenda is to check in on progress of those CX programs and priorities. So if you have different players around the table, folks like customer support or customer success, you want to make sure that they have a place at the table during these meetings to share, here's what's happening in these programs. Here's what we're hearing. Here's what we can offer for next time. So make sure you have the right leaders in place as well. And if you need help on deciding who should be involved, that CX charter resource has some ideas around that as well. So check that out for your team. We also want to review, of course, customer feedback and insights. This is where you go over what have we measured? What have we heard? What are our customers telling us? This is so important. And sometimes we jump into this step. And I'm going to explain why I recommend the first 2 agenda items first as we move through this. Now, number 4, we want to discuss innovations and forecasting. If there is one thing I see very commonly, it's that this step is skipped. We talk all about what's happened. We review the data that's already in, but we don't think about what's going to happen in the future. Customer experience is about staying ahead of customer expectations. And if those expectations are changing in the world around you and you're not paying attention, then customer experience won't deliver the kind of results that you want because you'll be overtaken by competitors who are paying attention. This is a really important step. We have a few ways to make this a little easier for you and frankly more fun for you as well. And then finally, we want to talk about what are those next actions and accountabilities. This is a meeting. We have to wrap up and figure out who's doing what are we doing, and what can we do next time to check in. So let's go into each of these in a little more detail to help you work through your own agenda. So the first one is reviewing and discussing your customer experience mission and goals. I like to kick off every meeting this way. I like to really set the tone by reminding everybody, what are we doing here? Well, this is our mission. This is why we're here. And so by explaining this is our customer experience mission and then reminding everyone what those goals are, then you are helping kind of level set. This is why we're here. This is what we're discussing. And this is why we're putting in the effort for what we're doing here. And then we also, of course, want to tie our CX goals to those organizational goals. So instead of just talking about why we are aiming for a higher net promoter score, for example, we want to tie that back and say, we know if we can increase our net promoter score, we can increase loyalty and retention, which will lead to X amount of revenue for our organization. Even if you aren't quite there yet with your financials, if you haven't quite figured out that level of detail, you can still make some suggestions about what that will do for your organization tied to those revenue goals. So look at those overall goals, make sure you're mentioning that, because as you get more leaders involved, you also want them to understand that this effort around customer experience, it serves them personally as a leader in their organization. So if you don't have a customer experience success statement, that can really help you think through this. We have a workbook on that as well. So check that out. But as you work through this agenda, I want to challenge you to think about ways to get other leaders involved. This shouldn't be the CX leader show. This is about a cross functional, supportive collaboration. And so if you can ask a different person on your team every time to kick off the meeting this way and say, will you be the one who goes over the mission statement, our goals, and the organizational goals? Can I give that part of the agenda to you? That does two things. One, it mixes things up, helps people understand that this is a team sport. And the other is sometimes we forget that asking somebody to do something is actually an act of engagement. We don't want our leaders to just show up to this meeting, check it off their calendar for the month, and show up next time. We need people engaged. And so asking them to be a part of it in this way helps people stay engaged and then feel like they are accountable for something and that they will put a little more effort in. So try that out. See if that works for you. Now that you've reviewed your goals, the mission, and really the foundation of why we're doing this work, then you really want to check in on those programs and priorities that are already happening within your organization. So you want to make sure that you're doing two things here. One is you might have a list of priorities already. Sometimes organizations have kind of a dumping ground of customer experience improvement suggestions. They come from customer journey mapping, they come from survey feedback, they come from leaders who say, you know what we should do. And so if you have all of those things and you understand how to prioritize them, that's what this team can really help you do. You can even come up with recommendations that then you bump up to your executive level and you say, these are the priorities that we recommend for this month or this quarter. And so make sure that the team is actively doing that. You also want to make sure you're looking at the ongoing CX programs. And this is where inviting people like your customer success leader, your customer support leaders, they can really share with you what's working, what's not, maybe what some of the challenges are. So you're constantly looking at what is happening, what happened in the last month or in the last quarter or in the last 2 weeks, and see if there are any adjustments you need to make quickly. So for each priority, we have some questions for you to think about. So ask the leaders to address, what was the priority? What are the actions that we are taking or have taken? Who is the person responsible? And what do we really want to happen here? What's the desired outcome of this priority? And so if you're looking back on this, you want to answer that question, was this outcome reached? Why or why not? It can be a little cumbersome if you try to do this for every single piece that you're going through. This is for your bigger priorities where you want to ask those questions, but it can also help you really refine how you're prioritizing. Sometimes what we see are leaders kind of looking out for their department, and so they might have different priorities. What we're doing on this team, we are putting the customer in the center of everything we do. We are agreeing as part of our CX charter that that is what we're doing here. And so talking through these things with that mission, that goal, that can really help you move through some of those territorial conversations that otherwise can happen. This is also where we recommend if you have a project manager, go for it, involve them in these meetings. They can be very, very helpful to move things forward. All right, so you have set the goals, you have talked about the mission, you have reviewed some of what's happening and where you are in your program. Next, of course, we want to look at those customer feedback and insights. We want to review what we have. So if you are reviewing, let's say, a dashboard or things like that, you want to definitely mark your progress. What does success look like? Are you getting closer to that? Why or why not? Really explore what those insights and what that data is telling you instead of just reporting out those numbers. The other thing that I like here is to start with a story, start with a customer story. Now, this seems like counterintuitive sometimes because we're talking about things at scale when we're talking about these dashboards and these numbers. But really, we are humans with heads and hearts, and we make decisions based on logic and love. We make decisions based on emotion. And so, if we can tell a customer story, we can help everybody in the room understand that those numbers that we talk about, they represent individual people and their individual lives. We have an impact on people in this work. We have to remember that. And so instead of just jumping into those dashboards, instead of just jumping into the numbers, really think about what's a great customer story here that we can tell that really shows that we either lived up to our mission or maybe we didn't. And let's talk about that too. This is another great thing to pass around to different people in the organization or in your meeting so that they can share their perspective. You'll hear different types of customer stories. You'll get different people engaged. It's a great way to kind of share the responsibility of this as well. So as you review those metrics and insights, ask a couple of questions. Did our customer metrics change? What are we actually tracking? And was there progress? Were there dips? What happened? Let's just talk about that. Are these changes part of a larger trend that requires our attention? Sometimes numbers go up and down a little, and we really understand why, and we understand it's short term. Other times we look at it and we say, you know what? This number has been steadily decreasing just a little bit month after month. What's going on? This is the team that can start to go back and look at those root cause analysis issues and really just understanding what is going on here with these numbers. And then are there specific moments in the customer journey that relate to this metric? Sometimes we know that, right? Delivery delays, that can have a big impact if somebody says they're satisfied at the end of receiving a product. Sometimes we know those things. So if there's a specific touch point that we know about, we can then go back and figure out, is there something we need to do here? Can we start alerting the customer to those delays earlier or whatever it is? This is the team to really look at all of that. So now that we've reviewed those customer insights and we understand the feedback, this is where we start to think about the future. Discuss innovation and forecasting. We get so caught up in data in the work we do that a lot of our time is spent looking back. What I want you to do now is start to look forward. Think about, what could we do? What are some of the ways that we can deliver for our customers tomorrow? And the reason we want to think about this is because if you aren't thinking about this, your competitors are. And if you aren't thinking about this, your customers are. So look for ways to understand customer behavior and customer expectational shifts. Sometimes this is about the greater marketplace, the world at large that we live in. I mean, think about all that we've lived through in these last couple of years. And we continue to look ahead and think, okay, how will this affect this? How will supply chain disruptions affect this? How will weather events affect this? How will things like the labor shortage in certain industries affect our customer experience and what our customers expect of us? We need to think big here. And so some of the questions to ask yourself is, first of all, what are we hearing from customers about those future concerns? If you do have customer success leaders, if you do have customer support in your organizational structure here to be part of these meetings, ask them, what are you hearing? Sometimes what they hear isn't showing up in your data right away, but they've heard stories, they've heard those concerns. Ask about those customer concerns. What can we forecast if those concerns are not addressed? What if we can't change the thing? What can we do about it? Can we be more proactive? Can we address things in communication with customers? Whatever you can do, it's a great chance to brainstorm. And then what CX innovations have you seen as a customer? It's a great question. If you as a customer have had a great experience, share that with this team as a spark of innovation and ideas for what to do to serve our customers better in the future as well. And then how can we create an ideal customer journey for our customers? If we are only thinking about what we are doing today instead of what we should do tomorrow, then we're going to miss that opportunity to fill in those gaps for our customers. If we know what the ideal customer journey is, but we never talk about it, that's not really serving our customers. So if you have that ideal journey map, if you've thought about things like service blueprinting, make sure that you use those tools here as well to get people to really forecast and innovate around the customer experience. And then what incremental improvements do we have the capacity to implement before our next meeting? Before our next meeting is probably the most important part of that question, because we want to make sure we are making progress. If you are looking for quick wins, this is a great question. We don't always need to, upend our entire process or transform our legacy systems on the back end to make a real change for our customers. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it's something like, you know what? We're going to check in with our customers more often. We're going to offer a new button that they can use on our mobile app that will make it more convenient for them. We know that we're about to roll that out. Let's make sure we do that in the right way for our customers. We're going to provide instructions in a place where maybe they're getting stuck. Think about those incremental changes that are easy to implement that we know we can deliver within a month or a quarter whenever we're meeting. That is a great way to keep momentum for these meetings as well. And, one last little asterisk here, little caveat is it's hard to go through all these questions at once. It can be really overwhelming and take way too much time. So if you're including this in your regular cadence of CX meetings, I recommend you pick one or maybe two of these and really go into it as part of the meeting. The other thing that we'll do is mix up the agenda a little bit, which is also fun. So I love the incremental question, especially if you're beginning, because that shows momentum and progress. If you're to that point in your customer experience maturity where maybe there aren't those quick wins as much anymore because you've fixed a lot of things or you've provided those, and these are bigger, stickier issues you have to dive into, those are great times to dive into those bigger innovation questions like, okay, what's happening? What are we hearing from our customers? What will happen if we don't address that? So think through kind of what fits with your agenda, but it's really powerful. And it's something that, unfortunately, in business, we do not spend a lot of time thinking about the future and innovating and forecasting, even though we know that customer expectations are changing faster than they ever have. Now it's time to wrap up the meeting and make sure everybody understands what just happened. This is where you want to review what are the priorities that we discussed. Do we have to adjust anything? Maybe abandon something, edit, whatever we have to do. Make sure that you're looking at the priorities and understanding what decisions were made about them in this meeting. And then you want to do what you should probably always do at the end of a meeting. You want to make sure everybody understands who is accountable for what and when. This is where, again, if you have a project manager, they can help guide people through their responsibilities in between these meetings. They can make sure things are staying on track. If that responsibility is falling on you, that's okay. Make sure you have a way to track that and a way for people to check in. This is where you literally go around and talk about who's doing what, when, and why. And of course, we talked about a few things that will really help you have success here. And we have a lot of additional resources I would really encourage you to check out to make sure that you can set yourself up for success. So, first of all, if you don't have a CX mission, we have a couple resources there, including a full workbook to help you through that. We have the same with a CX success statement. This really helps you think through what are our organizational goals, what are our leadership goals, and how do those tie into our customer experience goals? How can we really articulate that? We also want you to consider having a charter for this group, for this meeting. It will help everybody stay on the same page, understand their roles and responsibilities, and provide something documented that as people come in and out of this team, you have something you can share with them. We have a couple resources for you there, including another downloadable resource. And then we have some videos and articles for you around how to run a successful meeting. Now, I wish you a ton of success building your cross functional leadership team, getting your customer experience priorities aligned, making sure you're really delivering for your customers. This is about living that customer experience mission that I hope you've defined. The mission of my company is to create fewer ruined days for customers. Now, that seems so simple, but I know the effort it takes. And when we talk about creating fewer ruined days for customers, we're really talking about creating a better world. So thank you for being a part of this and helping me live my mission. Now, if you haven't already, please check out yearofcx.com for all of those resources. And then if you want more information about this or many other CX subjects, go ahead and subscribe. Check out our other videos on this channel because we're here for you. If you have questions, if you want to talk about training, workshops, consulting, coaching, reach out to us and let us support the great work that you're doing. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again next time.